Bibles to Exodus chapter 20. Exodus chapter 20. Exodus chapter 20, and here we find the Ten Commandments written by God. Exodus chapter 20. Was the law of God for the Jews only, or do they also apply to us? Well, here in Exodus chapter 20, you go to verse number 3, thou shalt not have any false gods, any other gods before me. Number 5, verse 5, thou shalt not bow down thyself, or thou shalt not make any graven image. When you go down to verse number 7, thou shalt not take the Lord's name in vain. Verse number 12, honor thy father, thy mother. Thou shalt not kill. Thou shalt not commit adultery. Thou shalt not steal. Thou shalt not bear false witness against thy neighbor. Thou shalt not covet thy neighbor's house, wife, or possessions. But we want to read the fourth commandment, the Sabbath commandment, found in verse 8 through 11. Let's see what that says. It says, remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. Interesting, this is the only commandment out of the 10 that God says, remember the Sabbath day. Why? Because it's the commandment that we forget, that we most likely forget. When you look at the Christian church as a whole, they have no problem with the commandment, thou shalt not kill. They have no problem with obeying the commandment, thou shalt not steal or lie or commit adultery. But we have a problem with the commandment that God specifically said, remember the Sabbath day. It says in verse 10, verse 9, 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. In it thou shalt not do any work, thou, nor thy son, nor thy daughter, nor thy manservant, nor thy maidservant, nor thy cattle, nor thy stranger that is within thy gates. Why does God say this? He says, for in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. So here is taking us back to creation. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth. God created the earth in 6 days, rested on the seventh day. So likewise we do all our work in 6 days and rest on the seventh day of the week, Saturday. So it points us back to creation. So when we go to creation in the book of Genesis, we should find similar language about the Sabbath, do we? Let's go to the book of Genesis. Let's go to Genesis chapter 2. It's actually on my shirt. Genesis chapter 2. Genesis chapter 2. And let's read verse 1 through 3. Genesis chapter 2, and let's read verse 1 through 3. And this is what the Bible says. So Genesis chapter 1, God goes from the first day to the sixth, making the world, creating the world, the animals, the seas, the sky, the planets, the stars, the sun, and mankind on the sixth day. Let's see what happens on the seventh day. It says, thus, verse 1, thus the heavens and the earth were finished, and all the host of them. And on the seventh day, God ended his work which he had made. And he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made. And God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, because in it he had rested from all his work which God created and made. So here, God on the seventh day rested. He blessed the day and he sanctified it. He made it holy. He consecrated the day for holy purpose. He sanctified it. So whenever we keep this seventh day holy, we also receive a sanctification blessing, this holy day of rest. We receive that blessing. God blessed the seventh day. He did not bless the first day. He did not bless the second day. He did not bless the third day or the fourth or the fifth or the sixth. He blessed the seventh day. Now this is an interesting point here, because according to Ray Comfort, the law of God was only for the Jews. Jesus was a Jew, and that's why in Luke 4, according to Ray Comfort, he went to the synagogue because he was obeying the law of the Jews that were given by God for Israel only. But here in Genesis, here in creation, where God blessed the seventh day as the Sabbath, this is before a Jewish nation ever existed. The only person that existed at this time was Adam and Eve. And the Jewish nation didn't come into Earth's history. Abraham wasn't born until about 300 years after the flood. So by then, the earth was almost 2,000 years old, approximately. So the Jewish nation did not come until about 2,000 years after creation. And here in creation, before a Jewish nation ever exists on the planet, God has already ordered the sanctification and keeping of the Sabbath day. So to say that the law of God was only for the Jews, especially the Sabbath, that's a negative, because we see here that before the Jewish nation ever existed, God ordered the seventh-day Sabbath to be holy so we could rest on it. Paul understood this. Let's go to Hebrews. Let's go to the book of Hebrews. Paul understood this very well, the holy day of rest on the seventh day. Let's go to the book of Hebrews, Hebrews chapter 4. Hebrews chapter 4, and let's read verse 4 and then 9 through 10. Hebrews 4, verse 4 and 9 through 10. This is what Paul says. It says, "For he spake in a certain place of the seventh day on this wise, and God did rest the seventh day from all his works." Verse 9. "There remaineth therefore a rest to the people of God." For verse 10, "For he that is entered into his rest, he also hath ceased from his works, as God did from his." So Paul understood, just like God ceased from all his works and rested on the seventh day, there also exists a rest for us to cease from all our works, just like God did, and rest in the seventh day. Now, people may say, well, how do you know the seventh day is Saturday? How do you know the seventh day Sabbath is Saturday? Well, simple. Why do you worship on Sunday? And the popular excuse is, oh, because Jesus resurrected on Sunday, which the Bible calls the first day of the week. Interesting. So you have no problem believing that the first day of the week is Sunday, but you have a problem believing that the seventh day of the week is Saturday. That right there makes no sense. Oh, the Gregorian calendar, we're under the Gregorian calendar, so we don't know what day. The Gregorian calendar made changes to the calendar in terms of how many days in the year, but it never changed the 7-day weekly cycle. The 7-day weekly cycle, with the first day of the week being Sunday and the seventh day of the week being Saturday, that has gone unchanged since creation. God established that at creation. So switching to the Gregorian calendar, it did not change the 7-day weekly cycle. In fact, the Jews, since Abraham, have always been worshiping the seventh day on the Sabbath on Saturday, because just ever since Christ. Luke 4, Christ was a Jew, and the Jews worship the seventh day on Saturday, as they have been doing for thousands of years. Christ did it, and we have no problem believing that Sunday is the first day, but we have a problem believing that the seventh day is Saturday. Well, the Bible makes it clear when you look at the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, and you read the resurrection, it points out that when Christ resurrected the first day of the week, it says, "And when the Sabbath was past, as the first day of the week began to dawn," that means that the day before the first day of the week was the seventh day, and the Bible calls that the Sabbath. So there should be no problem for us to accept the fact that the seventh day is the Sabbath.